Welcome, brave soul, I am the forgotten storyteller. Before we begin, tap that like button if you dare, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're listening from. And if you make it to the end of this video, I hope to see you in the next story. I hope you're ready, because I am. Let's begin. They say she whispers to the trees and the trees whisper back. Names, always names, carried on the wind like secrets too poisonous to speak aloud. No one dares say her name after sundown. Not out loud. Not even in dreams. Because if Mireille Black hears you, she remembers. And Mireille never forgets. Our story today begins in the quiet village of Greywick, a fog-wrapped patch of land cradled by ancient forest and time-forgotten superstition. The modern world had tried, unsuccessfully, to wrap its arms around Greywick. Cell towers never stood long. Roads cracked days after being paved. The internet stuttered and died if you whispered too loudly near the modem. But Greywick wasn't concerned with modernity. It clung to its old rhythms like a heartbeat, seasonal festivals, gossip-laced markets, and the unspoken law passed between generations never crossed Mireille Black. No one could recall the last time she was seen in daylight. She lived in a crooked house buried deep within the woods, where moss strangled the stones and the trees bent inward, as if shielding her from judgment or protecting the village from her. And yet, she was real, tangible. Her presence was as palpable as the dampness in Greywick's air. Some swore she kept a raven that spoke in tongues. Others claimed her herbs could cure anything, if you were willing to pay a price. But all agreed on one thing. Mireille cast spells. And if you crossed her, you'd know it. Thomas Vale didn't believe in curses. He believed in property lines, leverage, and return on investment. The man arrived in Greywick in a black luxury SUV, sleek as an obsidian coffin, and parked it arrogantly in front of the town hall, dust puffing around the tires like it was trying to reject him. He wore a smile that never quite reached his eyes. The kind that belonged to someone who thought they were the smartest person in every room, and usually was. He carried blueprints under his arm, the kind that bled dollar signs and disruption. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said during that first town meeting, "you're sitting on untapped gold. Think about what this land could be, a world-class resort. Lots of new jobs, plus more recognition. And not to forget wealth." The villagers shifted in their seats, some excited, most hesitant. But the moment he unrolled his plans and pointed to the eastern woods, a visible chill entered the room. Old Mr. Godfrey muttered, "That's Mireille's land." The room went still. Even the ceiling fan stopped its groan. Thomas laughed, light-hearted but sharp. "We've been in touch with all property owners," he lied, "except one. An eccentric woman, Mireille Black, yes? Surely someone can talk to her." Mayor Hemsworth cleared his throat. "It's complicated." Thomas scoffed. "Complicated is a matter of price. Everyone sells." 3 days later, Thomas Vale was standing in Mireille Black's overgrown garden. The crooked house rose from the moss like a broken tooth. Crows screamed from the trees. Vines curled around the gate as if they were listening. He knocked. The door creaked open before he touched it. Inside was dark, lit only by the amber glow of oil lamps. The scent of dried lavender, bloodroot, and something more metallic clung to the air. On shelves, jars of preserved things that floated without shape. Dolls with their mouths sewn shut. And herbs, lots of herbs. Then she appeared. Mireille Black. She wore a black shawl stitched with symbols Thomas didn't recognize. Her face was lined but ageless, her eyes twin wells of still, ancient water. "You're not welcome here," she said softly. He offered his practiced smile. "I'm here to make a generous offer." She looked past him toward the trees. "That land is not for sale. You could make a fortune. I already have what I need. If you don't reconsider." She raised a hand. Not to threaten. To warn. "Take what's not yours and you'll see what's mine." Thomas chuckled, turning to leave. "I'll give you time to think." Mireille said nothing. But the wind picked up as he crossed the threshold. The crows were silent now. And somewhere in the trees, something whispered. 2 weeks later, Councilman Fraser was dead. His body was discovered in his home, bloated, pulsing, his mouth stretched wide in a permanent scream. Hundreds of black beetles had burrowed into him through his eyes and ears. The coroner could only say one thing with certainty. The insects hatched inside him. At the funeral, no one spoke aloud what they were thinking. He'd laughed loudest at Mireille's warning. Then came Tyler Briggs, a 17-year-old who had spray-painted "Kill the Witch" in dripping red letters across her garden wall. He woke screaming 3 nights later. Screaming about eyes. About black hands crawling from the ceiling. He clawed at his face until his retinas ruptured. He never saw light again. And then came Alex Denton, Thomas's personal assistant. One morning his voice was gone, simply vanished, and he couldn't stop coughing. At first it was dust, then soil, then worms. By the end of the week he was hospitalized. They found nothing wrong with his lungs, but they kept filling with earth. Thomas began to panic, privately. Publicly he doubled down. He mocked the town, insisted the deaths were unrelated, and just coincidence. But fear was already rotting the village from the inside. Elena Cross arrived in Greywick just as Denton was committed. She was sharp-eyed, stubborn, and prided herself on never believing anything without evidence. Her podcast, Behind the Curtain, Debunking the Paranormal, had a solid following. Greywick, with its growing body count and whispered, "The Witch of Greywick," was perfect material. She interviewed everyone she could. Old women in shawls who clutched rosaries. Teenagers who dared each other to enter the woods. Men who drank too much and said too little. All of them feared Mireille, but not one would speak her name after sunset. Elena was intrigued but not convinced, until she met Eva Hemsworth, the mayor's wife. Eva spoke in hushed tones. Mireille was once a healer, helped everyone. Then her son, sweet boy, was accused of witchcraft. Nonsense, of course, but boys went missing. And then he died, found floating in the river. Mireille changed after that, and became something else. Elena leaned in. "And you believe she's responsible for what's happening now?" Eva trembled. "I know she is. And God help you if she learns your name." That night, Elena hiked into the woods with a flashlight, a recorder, and her usual arrogance. She found the house easily, almost as if it had been waiting. The door creaked open again just like they'd said. Mireille was not inside. What Elena did find was a book on the table. Old, bound in flayed leather. She opened it. There were names written in blood. The first name was Fraser, then Briggs, followed by Denton, and then Vale. Then a cross. Her own name bled into the page as she watched. Outside, the woods whispered. Elena staggered back from the book, heart hammering. She hadn't written anything, hadn't even touched a pen. And yet her name gleamed there, fresh and red, like it had been carved into the leather by an invisible hand. The moment the ink settled, the room darkened. The oil lamps hissed and flickered. Then the whispers came. Not from outside. From the walls. From the book. From somewhere beneath her skin. Her name, repeated again and again in a dozen tones, some childlike, some croaking, some sobbing. Elena Cross. Elena Cross. Elena. She slammed the book shut and bolted. Branches lashed at her face as she crashed through the trees. The deeper into the woods she ran, the more twisted they became, as if they were reaching for her, trying to pull her back. When she finally made it out and reached her rental car, panting and bleeding, she realized something terrifying. She hadn't recorded any of it. Her voice recorder was full of static. Her flashlight's battery was full, but the bulb had shattered inside. Whatever was in that house did not want to be captured. It wanted to be feared. And it had her name now. Elena tried to leave the next morning. Packed her bags, threw everything in the trunk, and drove toward the only road that led out of Greywick. She drove for over an hour, and somehow she ended up back in town. Not a loop, not a wrong turn. The same gas station, the same crooked fence, the same old man sitting on the porch, shaking his head. "You're marked," he told her, eyes cloudy but knowing. "She won't let you go. Not yet." "Oh, are you talking about Mireille?" He made a sign across his chest and looked away. "That ain't her name no more. She's something older now. Something deep." Elena tried again. And again. 3 more times. Each time, the road spit her back into Greywick like the village was a mouth, and she was just something too bitter to swallow. The confrontation. That night, Elena returned to Mireille's house. This time, the door didn't open for her. She knocked. No answer. She banged, screamed, demanded to be let in. Still nothing. So she picked the lock. The house was colder now. The air felt thick, like she was wading through liquid shadow. The jars on the walls were different, now filled with eyes. Dozens of them. Watching. Some blinked. She found Mireille in the garden, kneeling before a circle of black candles. The soil around her pulsed as if breathing. "You took something that wasn't yours," Mireille said without turning. "The book?" Elena held it up. "I want answers." "You don't want answers. You want a story. You want to twist what you don't understand into something palatable. Something you can edit and package." "I want to survive." Mireille stood slowly. Then listened closely. She walked toward Elena, eyes glittering in the candlelight. "I don't curse people, Elena. I reveal them. I give them what they are, magnified. A taste of their own rot. Elena swallowed. So Fraser and Briggs were bad people? Also Denton and Vale. They were all bad people? Mireille nodded once. Each of them guilty. Of things no law would punish. But the trees remember. The dirt remembers. And I show the village what they pretend not to see. Elena felt the weight of the book in her hands. And me? She asked. You wanted to expose me, not the truth. Just me. You came here not to understand, but to own. And that has a cost. But I didn't hurt anyone. Mireille stared through her. You were going to. Over the next few days, Elena tried to resist what was happening to her. But the signs were there. Shadows moved when she didn't. Her reflection stopped mimicking her. And sometimes, only sometimes, when she blinked, she saw other faces looking back. She stopped sleeping. The whispers got louder. Not just her name now, other names. Names she didn't recognize, but felt. And then her fingers started bleeding. Not from wounds, but from the tips. Like pens. She tried to write an article, but everything she typed turned into names. She tried to speak on her podcast, but her voice recorded as something else entirely. It was low and raspy, not human. And the book, it kept adding pages. She found herself staring at it for hours, memorizing the names, imagining their faces, and their sins. One night, she heard scratching at the window. She opened it. A raven stared at her with eyes too human. It spoke. One word. Right. Elena stood in the center of the town square the next day, barefoot, dirt-caked, holding the book. Thomas Vale was there, surrounded by the remaining council members, all pretending they weren't afraid. She walked straight up to him. You want to build your resort? She asked. He sneered. Don't tell me you're part of this madness now. She opened the book to a blank page. Thomas's name appeared, bleeding into the paper. He laughed, until the coughing started. Dark soil spilled from his mouth. Then worms. Then roots broke through his chest. People screamed and then ran. But Elena only watched, face unreadable. She left Greywick shortly after. This time the road let her go. The book sat beside her in the passenger seat like a loyal dog. She moved into a city apartment. Sterile, modern, safe. Her story went viral. She didn't tell everything. Just enough. The podcast was a hit. Book deals came. Speaking engagements. But the whispers followed. In mirrors. In screens. And also in sleep. She started seeing names again. Her neighbor who hid his wife. The barista who filmed people in secret. The CEO who silenced whistleblowers. Their names bled into the book, unbidden. And one night, Elena stopped resisting. She picked up a quill. And wrote. The ink dripped slowly, almost deliberately, as if savoring the moment. Elena's hand moved across the page with unnatural ease, each stroke fluid, elegant, precise. She didn't hesitate. The name was already in her mind before the thought formed. Martin Hale. She had seen him on the news, CEO of a pharmaceutical giant. Smiled for cameras. Donated to charities. But behind closed doors, he buried studies. Let children die for profit margins. She didn't need proof. The book knew. The book always knew. The moment his name soaked into the page, her apartment lights flickered. The air thickened like fog pressing inward. Somewhere in the pipes, something groaned. Not metal. Not human. Something older. Elena didn't flinch. This was her world now. The next morning, she awoke to a news alert on her phone. Breaking news. Martin Hale found dead in locked penthouse. Body covered in unexplained lesions and blackened veins. Authorities baffled. Elena didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just understood. A new kind of curse. Weeks passed. And the book grew. She tried locking it in a drawer. Burning it. Drowning it. Nothing worked. It always reappeared. On her desk, on her pillow, once even in her hands with a pen waiting beside it. And always there were new names. Some she didn't know. Others she did. An ex-boyfriend who'd spread lies. A professor who humiliated her. A woman who stole from the dying and blamed the sick. At first she hesitated. Then she didn't. The names poured out like venom drained from a wound. It became a ritual. First a cup of tea. Light a candlelight and then get the book. Elena never asked for visions. But sometimes they came. A mirror would ripple. A shadow would nod. A whisper in a language she didn't speak would settle into her bones. And then the ink would flow. It was nearly midnight when the knock came. Not the polite kind. Not frantic. Deliberate and very rhythmic. 3 slow taps. Elena opened the door. And there she was. Mireille Black. She hadn't aged. Not by a second. Her eyes were still dark wells, bottomless and knowing. She wore the same black shawl, though now the fabric shimmered faintly with something alive beneath it. Elena didn't speak. Neither did Mireille. She stepped inside without being invited, her fingers grazing the spine of the grimoire as she passed. The book vibrated like it recognized its maker, or its keeper. "You're writing," Mireille said softly. "Good." Elena's voice cracked. "I don't know if it's right." "Right?" Mireille looked amused. "What you hold is not justice. It is reckoning. And reckoning is rarely clean." Elena swallowed. "Am I like you now?" "No, child," Mireille whispered. "You're still you. That's why it chose you." "It? Who's it?" Elena asked. "The forest, the dirt, the old tongue. The part of the world people paved over, buried, and forgot. But it remembers. It always does." Mireille touched Elena's cheek gently. "But even power has its price." A coldness crept up Elena's spine. "What price?" "You've borrowed their eyes," she said, gesturing to the book. "Their sight, their judgment, that which sees the rot in human souls. It will not stop. Not unless you pay its due." Elena felt it then, deep in her bones. The hunger. The book wasn't just recording names. It was feeding. And so was she. That night, Elena dreamed she was underground. Roots wrapped around her ankles like shackles. The soil pulsed with voices, names, 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 until they became unbearable. She saw herself, another version, older, paler, scribbling names with bleeding fingers, laughing and crying and whispering to the ink. And standing in the corner, smiling with sad eyes, was Mireille. "It will consume you," she said. Elena awoke to find a name on the page. Elena Cross, scrawled in her own handwriting. Her blood, her own ink, her legacy. She tried to resist, tried to warn people, tried to undo what had begun. But the book would not be discarded, and neither could she. So Elena changed course. She stopped choosing names from spite, stopped letting anger guide her hand. Instead, she began to investigate, to listen, to learn the truth of the names that came to her. She stopped being the hand of vengeance and became something else entirely, the hand of revelation. And in time, she understood what Mireille meant. She wasn't cursing anyone. She was revealing what they already were. No one had seen Mireille Black in years. Some said she returned to the woods, to be swallowed by the trees she called kin. Others believed she never existed, just a myth to keep the town of Greywick in check. But in cities and suburbs, in skyscrapers and slums, whispers had begun. Of a woman who wrote names in a cursed book. Of sinners who died the way they deserved. Of shadows that watched from mirrors and a voice that sometimes spoke from dead air. Even curiosity has a price. They said her name was Elena Cross, but some called her something else. The new Black Witch. Elena sits at her desk, candles flickering low. She opens the book. Tonight's name has already written itself. She sighs, hesitates, then nods. Outside, thunder rolls, and a scream echoes through the night. Let us know in the comments, if you were Elena, would you have taken the book?
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts. Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare.